Well, welcome to the podcast, Palak.
Thank you so much, Whitney. Thanks for having me.
So, like we were chatting, I think this is the perfect time of year to be having this conversation. You and I are connecting right before the summer solstice. Like, this is the time of year we all want to get outside and we want to play and we want to connect and we want to make more like minded friends. But I don't think any of us know how to do that anymore.
I know it's funny because I think we're all craving it, and yet
Yeah.
for some reason I mean, there's lots of reasons why, but the art of it has been lost, and we're trying
Yeah.
to kind of navigate our way back to what human connection even means and kind of doing it on our terms and in a new digital age because things have shifted a lot over the past few years.
Yeah. So, what has made you passionate about living in the present moment and then helping other people get back to being in the present moment?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that have kind of led me down this path and led me to pursue this life of wanting to live in the present, in the here and now, really take advantage of like a full life. When I was younger, when I was about 15 years old, my dad passed away suddenly of a heart attack. And so losing a parent at a young age, obviously it teaches you life lessons. And subconsciously, I think it really just drilled down how precious life really is. And I mean, you don't really realize those things until you go through a loss yourself or you're faced with something that's a bit more dire and you really are kind of like hit with this reality that life is short. And so from that age, I was really convinced that I didn't want to live just for retirement. And I think that's
Yeah.
because that came from the mentality of my parents that they look forward to retiring. They would talk about traveling the world and having these big dreams. And my dad never got to do those things. And so knowing that that was his experience and he gave me this amazing life where I have the privilege of having the choice, I want to build a life where I can enjoy every moment in my
Mhm.
everydays, not just looking at when I'm 60 and I'm retiring, I want to infuse that into my day to day. So that was one of the reasons. And the other reason is after working corporate for about 10 years, I was working in the corporate world in different jobs, and I just found I was lacking a sense of community. And I really, living in a big city, I really wanted to connect more with people in person. And so I sought out these experiences that would really fill my cup. And I realized that it wasn't always about the big vacation. Those are great too. But sometimes it is just those day to day moments where we're gathering with people we love, we're gathering with our friends, making connections in person. And those are just the little shifts that we can do to change our state and to just feel like we're living a more full life and not just living for like the next big thing.
Yeah. So, what were those different activities that you sought out?
Yeah, so when I was working a corporate job, I started doing a lot of like wellness and fitness classes. This is before
Yeah.
it was probably even as popular as it is now, where there's like group experiences. This was about 7 years ago. And so I was starting to get into yoga and meditation, and I would go to these fitness classes and I would realize that people weren't necessarily talking and connecting with one another.
Yeah.
They would go to the class, it would be like in and out, and there wouldn't be these moments where we were allowed to like have that conversation unless you were really proactive in starting it. And often people are shy, so they weren't necessarily hanging out to do that. And so that's what sparked this idea that I wanted to bring more of the activities to people where they felt like they could linger, where they could slow down and feel like they could savor the experience and not just
Yeah.
rush through an activity because they want to check it off their to-do list and feel like they did something productive. It was more like, well, how can I infuse these experiences into people's lives where it's not always about the activity you're doing, it's just about the feeling that it actually brings you. And that's when I started my company and started offering all sorts of activities to specifically women.
It's so interesting that we as women were like in a rush to get all these things done, including our workouts and all the little activities. And I talk to a lot of my male guy friends, and they go to these workout classes too because they want the workout, but they also want to meet someone. They want to
Yeah.
connect with someone. Like they want to find someone that's into the same things they are and connect. And they said the issue that they keep having is the women are like moving in and out. Like they can't even slow down enough to like ask them a question or flirt with them. Isn't
That's
that
so
interesting?
that's funny to hear that feedback. I actually noticed this at the gym when I observe myself. So when I do go to
Yeah.
just like a typical gym setting, I find that from just what I've observed, that I find that men are more likely to linger a little bit. Like they're slower paced in their workouts. They're doing the weights. They're going from machine to machine. They're stopping. They're hanging out a bit more, and they're kind of making it an experience naturally. Where women are tend to want to be very productive and be like, okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
get this done in 45 minutes. I have this many reps, or I have this class to get through. and I'm just going to check it off. And yes, got my morning workout done. Now I can go cold plunge, or now I can go to the sauna. Now I can grab a healthy smoothie. I can go
Yeah.
for my walk, and I can go about my day. And I think that's because of our need to feel like we are making every moment productive, especially if we're ambitious and especially if you're driven or entrepreneurial. It's just the nature of the beast, like wanting to make every moment feel like you're adding value or being productive in each moment. And that doesn't allow
Yeah.
much time for that like slow lingering and hanging out for natural things to occur.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for even when we are in those moments? So we do go to a real life event with like minded people, like we finally got there. How do we relax and just enjoy the moment and enjoy being there and meeting people instead of feeling like we're constantly needing to go?
Yeah, it's a tough thing to do because I find it's almost these days it's like counterintuitive. You just feel like you want it to be productive, you want to get the value out, and then you want to be on your way. But when you are going to these gatherings, and I host hundreds of events, I've seen it happen with attendees that come. The biggest and most simple tip is to get off your phone. And I know that seems so simple, but honestly, it's harder. It's really easier said than done. It's harder to do because once you're off your phone, it's just a natural tendency to be like, oh, now I can look up. I have the permission that I'm giving myself to like not look down, not worry about my notifications, not be on, maybe your watch is giving you notifications. It's like
Yeah.
you're in a room with people. Just allow yourself to have that space to connect with someone. That means basic things like eye contact, smiling at a stranger, striking up conversation. And I often find like it can be intimidating for people to go into a room full of strangers and feel like they can connect. And so my one simple tip is just
Mm.
find one person in the room that you think looks somewhat approachable and just try that first. You don't have to have the goal of talking to everyone in the room, making your way around, but just find one person that you feel like, they might have a warmer energy and you feel drawn to them. So head over and just introduce yourself or just ask if you can join in on a conversation that's happening. And I've never seen it happen where someone's not welcome in. Like, I know it seems scary, but most
Yeah.
people are going to be receptive and they're going to be like, of course you can join, and they'll welcome you in. And so I just think there's simple things we can do to get back to the ways of basic human connection where it's not actually that complicated. But I think we are stacking all the things that feel complicated. And a lot of that has to do with social media and sort of our relationship to social scenarios these days.
So, where can we go to even start finding events and opportunities to connect with like minded friends, like minded people, and really kind of make new friends as adults?
Yeah, it's a big question that a lot of people have these days. And I think there's probably more resources now than ever because we are digitally connected to be able to
Yeah.
find these things. Like in the past, it would be, whatever's happening in your local neighborhood, like maybe a meetup or a neighborhood hangout or barbecue that you would go to. But now you have access to the whole world. So even when you're traveling, you can meet people. So the biggest tip for this is just really finding local groups with like-minded interests. There are so many platforms that exist, whether it's Meetup, whether it's Eventbrite, whether it's any sort of ticketing platform, you can type in anything from the day of the week to an interest that you might have, whether it's a sports activity, a wellness related activity, could be food or drink, but you can filter it all out, find something that you're drawn to. Just Google local events, or you can, there's obviously on social media, there's tons of accounts where people are doing, I for one do roundups of events that are happening in my city and beyond. I post
Yeah.
things in my membership community about how people can connect. Or you can host your own, which I always also love suggesting that you might want to, find ones locally. But if you have something in mind and you have a specific reason that you want people to gather, then I encourage people to like try hosting your own. You can really easily build and cultivate friendships that way because you can start something on an ongoing basis and start to facilitate that connection on a regular basis. And it really will create the friendships that you are looking for.
What would be some of the topics that you could create an event for?
Well, one of my favorites that I do and I have as part of my membership community is Cookbook Club. So,
Yeah.
Cookbook Club is like a basic, easy way to gather with a group of people. Generally, people love gathering over food. I'm sure your audience can relate to this.
Yeah.
Gathering over a shared meal and without the intimidation behind hosting a dinner party. So, obviously,
Yeah.
if you're hosting a full dinner party, it's like not everyone wants to cook appetizers to dessert and all the courses in between. So just having a cookbook club, the way it works, you just pick a cookbook, you all cook a dish from that cookbook or from a blog. It could be a food blog, doesn't have to even be a physical book. But you all create a dish and you come together for like a potluck style
Yes.
family dinner or brunch or whatever meal of the day that you want. You pick a day and one person hosts in their home and you can rotate. If you don't feel like hosting at home, you could also host in a garden, like at a park. It doesn't have to be inside your home, but I always say that when you open your home up to people, it allows for deeper connections. So I love hosting at home and I love when people do that. I think it just offers a whole new way of getting to know someone. But Cookbook Club is just such a beautiful way. I've been doing it for 5 years. I've made some of my closest friendships from it. In my membership community, I have a whole guide as to how to host it. You can like find cookbook clubs around the world so that when you're visiting a new city, you can like join another cookbook club. But it's just such a great way to gather and like break bread together because that's really
Yeah.
what it's about. It comes back to like our roots of what makes us feel comfortable. We share a meal, we share conversation, we gather around a table, and it's just a really beautiful shared experience.
How many people do you have come to your cookbook club?
I try to cap it at 8 max, including myself. So I would
Yeah.
say myself and 7 other people, because I do think that allowing for that intimate conversation without feeling overwhelmed, there's too many people, you don't get a chance to chat with everybody. So I like to keep it between 6 to 8. It could be as small as 4 people and maybe as big as 8. Anything above that, it might get a little chaotic just to try and connect with everybody. But the 8 people I feel is like a sweet spot of really allowing that conversation to naturally occur and for everybody to
Yeah.
connect. It's a really beautiful number and gathering.
Do you allow people to come more than once, or do you always have a
Totally.
fresh group? Okay.
No, so if you really want to develop those friendships and you want like that core group that you're looking for, a lot of people as adults are actually looking to find their best friends. They're not necessarily people that they've gone to high school with and had the privilege of growing up alongside. So I often hear from a lot of women that like I don't really have a best friend or a group of close girlfriends. So if you really want to facilitate that connection, and I feel like you can start really easily where you don't need to know 7 people that you want to invite. You could know one person and you can ask that person to invite one other person that you don't know, ask that person to then invite one other person. So it's kind of this ripple effect where all of a sudden it's you plus one and you're meeting 6 other strangers over a dinner. And I think that's a really great way of creating this new group and forming your own group of people that they might not be the people that you go to for everything, but you do know you have this standing date of a monthly cookbook club that's kind of a non-negotiable. And it gives you like a tradition and ritual to look forward to in your calendar. I mean, I know that it's done it for me. It's done it for tons of women that I've shown this to, and they really look forward to it every month.
Is there a day of the week that's easiest for people to gather? So if someone was looking to create an event, what's the day of the week that most people can kind of, really follow through after a day of work?
The follow through is such a good like point that you bring up because society in general has a tough time these days following through just with the nature of being able to like
Yeah.
cancel over text. So I always say like rules of cookbook club are that you commit to cookbook club. Like don't be part of it unless you can't commit to it. And if you obviously have something urgent that comes up or something that, is you just can't miss and it's a like milestone event that you need to not be present for, I that's understandable. But generally, it's like you're attending this because your goal is to cultivate connections. So it shouldn't matter what day of the week it is. Really, I just suggest creating a poll with the group that you've decided and being like, what day works best. I find that weekdays between either a Tuesday or Wednesday night are usually good because it's kind of the beginning of the week. You want something to look forward to. It's not heading into like a crazy social calendar between Thursday and Sunday, which a lot of people have.
Hmm.
If you
Yeah.
have kids, then you might not be able to manage the weekends. So a Tuesday or a Wednesday is generally better for organizing like after work events.
That's really interesting. It is true that Thursday often gets grouped into the weekend, and that's
Yeah,
when you can start to lose people, or people will travel, go out of town. So that's a really good way to kind of relook at the week.
exactly. I just find that it's like easier for people to commit when it's a Tuesday or Wednesday. When I host events too, I typically do it on those days and find a better turnout than when it's a weekend. And yeah, people might be away and schedules are harder to coordinate.
So this sounds like really fun, like in theory, but some people will ultimately get social anxiety when it's like time to show up or when you first get there. I think even the most social, friendly, outgoing people can even freeze up these days when they get into certain
Yeah.
situations. Do you have any suggestions for like when you're walking towards the party or you first get into the room and that feeling creeps up where you're nervous or uncomfortable and there's no reason for it? How can we like calm ourselves down and get comfortable introducing ourselves to strangers?
It's such a common feeling. And the one thing I will say is that you'd be surprised, but I'm pretty sure that every single person feels this way. Despite how confident you are, if you're walking to a room full of strangers,
Yeah.
you're going to have some sort of feeling creep up like, oh, I don't know anyone there, or I'm not sure who I'll talk to, or I don't know how this will go. What I'll say about that is, I actually think it's a big role of the host to be able to foster that connection amongst the guests. So, as the host, whether it's cookbook club, a dinner party, or a professional event that you're throwing. I've taken the Art of Gathering course by Priya Parker. I've done my own
Ooh,
course all about
yeah.
hosting your own IRL events. So if you're looking to host your own event, I take you through my entire process on how I do it from the point of invitation to execution. So it's a really simple 2 hour masterclass that teaches you everything you need to know. But I always say it starts at the point of invitation. So the host is responsible for making sure that the group feels comfortable, because no one wants to walk in feeling like they don't belong or they don't know what their place is or why they were invited to connect with this specific group of people. So if
Yeah.
the host hasn't done that and you're still feeling worried, I mean, I think you as the host have that responsibility. So for anyone out there that wants to host, I think that's the thing that you should be most mindful of, is how do I make sure immediately when my guests come in that they feel welcome, that they feel accepted, that they feel comfortable. So there's lots of things that you can do as the host to do that. But if you're attending and you have some of that anxiety creeping in, I actually always suggest reaching out to the host in advance if you can and you have direct access to them, sending a note and just letting them know that like your nerves are kind of there and saying, hey, I'm really looking forward to this, but like I don't know anyone. Is there someone specific you think I should talk to when I'm there that I can maybe connect with, or that you think I'd like really get along with? And I've had people do that with me, or I've, as the host, kind of facilitated that connection. I'm a connector naturally, but just sort of thinking about,
Yeah.
okay, that person would, get along with that person because they have this in common, or whatever it may be. And that way, once you get there, you kind of know who to look out for, and you could be like, oh, Palak told me that we would get along really well, and I really just want to introduce myself. And it kind of breaks some of that ice even in advance of you going to the event. So reaching out is never a bad thing. If someone's hosting an event or hosting a cookbook club, there's no harm in trying to make that connection before the event actually happens, because the event's already in
Yeah.
place once the invite is sent.
Yeah, and that, you bring up a really good point about the job of the host is to help people connect and
Yeah,
facilitate those connections. I mean, that's a big part of why you're having the gathering anyway. You want your
exactly.
guests to feel comfortable and have fun, and you want your friends to meet your other friends or your future friends to meet your future friends.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think people often forget that. And what I hear the most often is, I want to host because I just want to have a party, or I want to host because it's
Mm.
my birthday, or I want to host sort of for an occasion, but there has to be a reason and intention behind the gathering. So even if you're looking at, a birthday party, it's like, great, you want a birthday party, but there's so many intentions that you can have it as a birthday party. Is it because you want to celebrate a milestone? Is it because you want to recognize the people in your life? Do you want them to contribute to something? Do you want them to play a role in the gathering? Like, all of these questions are often overlooked, and that's why some gatherings fall flat and people leave wondering what happened, or maybe they didn't feel so great when they were there, or they're wondering at the event, like, what am I doing here? Or I'm not having the best time. Happens all the
Yeah.
time. And that falls on the host to make sure that they are being really clear with their guests as to why they've chosen to consciously bring this group of people together.
Got it. Do you have any tips, since you've hosted so many kind of cookbook meetups, on making sure that the table's balanced? Because if everyone's choosing the recipe they want to create from a cookbook, it might not be a full balanced meal. So how do you tackle that?
Yeah, I always say with like planning, so I have a whole template that people can use in order to plan the actual meal, but I for sure think it's so important to make it balanced. There's the categories of obviously having like the appetizers or starters, main dishes, dessert, and beverages. That could be alcoholic or non, whatever you choose. But making sure there's a wide range of those things. So let's say you're having 8 people, then there's going to be 8 different things brought to the table. So you kind of
Yeah.
want to aim for about 2 dishes in each category, and then one person to do beverages. Typically, the role of the host is that they're really just there to like set up, and they're providing like the cutlery and the dishes and the actual tablescape. They can customize it however they want, and create whatever beautiful tablescape that they wish. Maybe they can take care of beverages because they're the ones hosting, and then everyone else can bring a dish. So you actually should be filling out that information in advance and sharing it with the group so that
Mhm.
if someone's bringing like a carb heavy dish, then maybe someone else balances that out with a protein, and making sure that there's like vegetable sides that they can also bring into the dinner, just so it's all balanced and you're not stuck with like five pasta dishes. Although that wouldn't be
Exactly.
such a bad thing sometimes, but yes, it's like making sure the meals are balanced for sure. Or like you don't have five desserts because everyone might feel like it's easy to bake a dessert. And so you want to kind of,
Exactly, unless it is a dessert themed party.
exactly.
But I know when I've been a guest before, I like it when I can choose from a category. So I think
Yeah.
we forget that people really like structure.
Yeah.
Um, like I always say, as a personal chef, clients don't do well if you tell them, I can make you anything.
Yes.
They can, suddenly they don't know what they want to eat. But when
Yeah.
you provide a menu, when you provide suggestions, then people suddenly start to get inspired and they're like, oh no, that now I know what I really want to do. So help
Yeah.
kind of guide them into a category is what you're saying.
Exactly. Like the more choice you give someone, the harder it becomes to make a decision for
Yeah.
them. So, yes, I absolutely think it's key to do that. And as part of my community, I actually suggest a few dishes from each category so that if you
Okay.
don't even want to think about it, then I'll just offer it up to you and you could be like, great, the menu's done. I can just use that. But if you really want to get creative and you want to go through the book on your own, then for sure, just having those dishes outlined and people can vote on them, people can put them in advance, and then you can kind
Yeah.
of fill in the gaps. So it's like a little bit of a first come, first serve. Like if you fill it in first and you pick a main, then someone else can pick a dessert or whatever's kind of left at the end, and make sure that it's more balanced. And I've never really been to a gathering or seen gatherings where there isn't that wide variety because everyone kind of tends to go with the rules. But it's kind of what you said, that you need that structure. So when I first created Cookbook Club 5 years ago, I made sure there was like the rules of Cookbook Club, and had those outlined, and it was like, commit to it every month, and it must be like a balanced meal over multi courses, and that one cookbook is picked and someone always has to host and we have to rotate. Like those are all part of the rules that just help people understand, and it doesn't leave it as a free for all casual thing like, oh, should we do this month and we have to reinvent the wheel each time. It's like you have that structure every month so you know what to expect, and you also know what's expected of you.
I love that. That's so great. Are there any particular cookbooks you have loved
Oh,
pulling from in the over the past year or two?
yes, I have done some really great cookbooks with friends, and it's been honestly all delicious. One of the ones I love is ottolenghi, so it's nice to do
Yes.
anything ottolenghi because you're just having
Anything.
anything. So I have pretty much all of the cookbooks, but
Yes.
just doing, any of the dishes creates this beautiful, colorful, fresh Middle Eastern inspired feast of like a
Mhm.
wide range of dishes, from like
Yeah.
vegetables to mains to like rice dishes and the dessert. It's a bit more intensive in terms of the like dishes, but you can find simple ones. Like he actually has a cookbook called Simple,
Yeah.
that is great for those. So that one I love. And if I'm looking at a bit more, I've done a vegan cookbook club before with Deliciously Ella, and that was really
Mhm.
nice because it's just like basic plant-based recipes that are like nourishing and felt really good. So I
Yeah.
loved doing that one, as well. I've hosted an afternoon tea one, which was really fun, doing Sweet Laurel cookbook selections, which was great.
Yeah.
So just like cake and dessert, but all kind of almond flour based. So that was really nice too. And so it was like gluten-free desserts, but we obviously felt good eating them because they were made with like wholesome ingredients.
Yeah, those are all great choices. And then what I also like, some of the people that you mentioned, like Ottolenghi, he has recipes on The Guardian. So,
Yes.
again, you don't have to buy the book. You can look online. They have lots of, Deliciously Ella. I've been following her for years. She has some great recipes on her website and her app. So you
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to buy the books. You can
Yeah.
get the recipes in other ways just by downloading or paying for their apps or going online. But I also love using the library for cookbooks. So I just
Same.
wanted to like remind people that
Yeah.
libraries have cookbooks and you
Yes.
can go there too if you wanted to do something like a cookbook club. You can help people use that tool if you want to, I like it to try before I buy. Like that's what I do sometimes, even with like some Hay House books. I will try and I ultimately will end up going and buying the book. But sometimes there's just certain kind of spiritual wellness, health books that you just kind of need to pick up first to see if it's worth adding to your library.
I love that you brought that up because I love the library. I'm a big fan of the library and I totally agree. And I also know that people within the cookbook club, yeah, they don't always purchase the book. I mean, you could end up with like hundreds of cookbooks that you might not want to collect all of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely a fan of the library. And yes, you can find so many things online. So even if it's a blog that's recreated a recipe, even if it's not the official blog, there's often people that recreate them and post maybe a little version of it or something that you can get inspired by. So I think not needing to feel like pressured to have to like participate in that way, that you can still enjoy it and find the recipes and lots of resources online too.
Yeah, and you can become a part of more than just one library group. So I have a library card for Laguna Beach. I have a library card for Newport Beach, Costa Mesa. So like
Right.
you can get multiple areas because everything's going to draw on a complete different, pool of books. So if you don't have your library card for the summer, I mean, what is summer without a library card?
Love it.
I know it's probably been a long time since most of the listeners have been like, pick up a book for the summer at the library, but that's what we did every week growing up. Picked out a new
Oh,
book to take to the
same.
beach.
I loved that. That's one of my favorite
Yeah,
memories actually as a child. I think about
me
that
too.
often.
We
Yeah, it was
always
fun.
went and picked up a book, and it was our book to read for the week. And my mom would always make sure that when we were at the beach that we had some quiet time where we sat down
Mm.
and read our books. I mean, it's really like the cutest thing
Oh,
ever.
that's so wholesome and makes me so happy. I wish that people would do that now. I mean, I'm definitely a believer in keeping up with those sort of
Yeah.
traditions because I think it's so beautiful and those simple moments are the memories that we create for ourselves. So I love that you had that growing up.
Yeah, and we would have to make a list of all of our summer reading that we did.
Oh,
So
that's
like it was so rewarding at the end of summer, I would see my list of all the
mm,
books that I read, and you would just be so proud of yourself for like doing all that.
I love
So
that. I still have a list.
yeah, I was like adult summer challenge. Like I did just
Yes,
order multiple books off Amazon, so let's see if I can get through them.
so good.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your book because your book's on
Yeah,
Amazon. It's beautiful. It has
thank
amazing
you.
reviews. So perfect. Beautiful Everydays, a guidebook to living in the here and now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me more about it.
Yes, so the book, it's, very nostalgic, similar to these library memories that we're talking about. It's basically filled with activities for turning simple moments into memories. I kind of call it's like a cookbook, but for
Yeah.
experiences that you can have at home and that you can infuse into your day to day. So, we're all so digitally connected these days, and yet we're craving a slower paced life, one that we can actually enjoy. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I don't think it's always about, the next big thing and the next vacation and needing to escape your life. I think, of
Yeah.
course, those are things we can look forward to, but there's ways that we can find simple joys in our day to day that will truly fill our cup. And so it's filled with activities that are divided into 4 different sections. So there's like a nourish section that has to do with food and food related activities. There's nest, which is all about your home, nature, which is like getting out in nature and doing some fun activities there, and nurture, which is about nurturing yourself and your well being and your soul. And so it's just a compilation of things that I've done. I did a lot of these over the pandemic, and they were just ways for me to like feel connected to myself and the people around me, whether it's with a partner, whether it's with your children, it could be with your friends, or even do them yourself. And I just find that I really would love for people to pick this up instead of picking up their phone some evenings
Yeah.
and just dive in. And so far, the feedback has been that anyone that's done that has felt like they did something good for themselves and left feeling way calmer and way more connected.
Yeah. Well, tell me about, your company and the events that you put together and the
Sure.
inspiration for that.
Yeah, so the company's called Embiria, and the word means experience. I started it about 7 years ago after working 10 years of corporate jobs. I was in marketing, and despite loving my corporate career and sort of the stability it brought, I was always longing for something more, and I felt like I had a bigger mission and purpose in life. And so when I was talking about wanting to live this life that's really fulfilled, the idea of Embiria really came from that how can I allow other people and give them the permission to give themselves to have those experiences as well. And so it all started with this idea of bringing them together through various activities and events around the city. But then it really just sparked into more of a movement of doing it, whether it's through the book and you're picking up the book, whether you're coming to one of my events, whether you're part of the membership community, we're really on this like larger mission to slow down and savor our lives and enjoy our
Yeah.
day-to-day experiences. So that means gathering with people you love. That means taking time out for yourself. That means not feeling like you have to be productive all the time and actually just slow down so that you can look back on your life and feel like you filled it with beautiful experiences that actually light you up. So that's what the
Yeah.
brand is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. We need little reminders to do that kind of every week,
Yeah.
so we don't get caught up.
Exactly. I talk a lot about, I know that we're all socially connected through digital means, but I do think there's a negative side to that, the same way that there can be a negative side to a lot of things. And it's a matter of trying to find healthy relationships with things. So when we're looking at social media, oftentimes we're saying no to hanging out in person, but then we end up scrolling our phone for hours on social media. And that doesn't necessarily leave us feeling good. And we are all guilty of it because these things are designed to be addictive. And so I'm just trying to provide ways and communities and like events that allow you to have the permission to get off these devices sometimes and
Yeah.
not always be binge watching or doom scrolling or doing the things that
Yeah.
don't leave you feeling lit up. I mean, I want you to come to my event or pop into my community and feel like you are energized, not depleted, and like you've done something that has made you feel better than when you came in.
So, what are some things that you want to do this summer that are going to light you up?
Oh, I have so many activities. I'm a list maker, so I love lists. I love doing things that, are sort of inspired by the list, and I always have different things going on, but some of them are actually inspired by the book. So one of the activities in the book is Anywhere Picnic, and I feel like, we all romanticize this idea of a picnic, but I have Anywhere Picnic and Dining al Fresco. They're both activities in the book. And the whole idea is like you don't need this like fancy setup to do these things. It can be something basic. I mean, you can grab a few snacks, a bottle of wine if you drink, or just a beverage of choice, and head to a park with some friends and like hang out outside and take your meal outside and just
Yeah.
like gather on a weeknight. It doesn't need to be a weekend. You don't need to plan it weeks in advance. Do these like more impromptu things. So one of the things that I'm looking to do is host and attend more picnics this year and just be outside as much as possible. Going for long walks, I think, is really beautiful. I live near a beach in Toronto, and so going for long walks with
Yeah.
my dog, I love to do that. I'm hosting dinners as part of my community. So some summer dinners, you mentioned, like summer solstice, and just hosting a dinner to like welcome in summer. And it's full of farm fresh ingredients, garden inspired, and it's going to be a beautiful
Yeah.
sort of farm to table dinner that I'm doing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of, I talk a lot about living like the European lifestyle. I am a European citizen as well. And so I just really take a lot of examples from, I've spent time living in Italy and I've traveled Europe a lot. And I think there's lots of things that they're doing well. And I want to use a lot of those and just inspire my day to day life here in North America with a lot of those things.
When we get into the winter months, when things get cold, when there's less light,
Mm.
how do we stay social during those times? Or are we even supposed to? Are we supposed to take a cue from nature and let that be the time that we go inward? What's your thoughts on managing the winter time?
That's a great question. It's funny, actually. I have learned to manage it by escaping winters and going to Austin, Texas for 6 months of the year. So I actually now officially am a snowbird. And for the past 3 years, I've been doing winters away because that's what works for me. But I've spent my entire life growing up in Toronto, Canada, where it's freezing in the winter. So about 6 months, it is darker. We don't get as much sunshine and it snows a lot and it's very, very cold. And I notice that
Yeah.
social plans are much less. People just don't want to leave. I have a November birthday, and I remember growing up where people would cancel on my birthday because of snowstorms or they didn't want to go out of their house. And yeah, it definitely is something that I think has affected my view on winter. But I will say, like, even within the book, there's a whole section called Nest because I do think that we are meant to have times where we go inward, where we're
Yeah.
reflecting more, we're cozy, we're spending time within ourselves and just sort of in solitude, but in a good way, not in a way where
Yeah.
it feels lonely, in a way that we're filling up our cups. But often we do activities that end up feeling easiest to us. So we think that means just like binge watching shows all the time, which there's a time and a
Mhm.
place for that. And of course, no one's saying that that's wrong to do, but it's nice to balance it out with other wholesome things that might light you up. So that could mean, cozying up with a really good physical book by a fireplace and lighting a candle and setting a whole scene and having blankets and making a cup of tea and making it an experience. So all of these little things, we might look at them as simple activities, but if you turn it into an experience, it becomes a joyful, momentous occasion instead of just, oh, I'm just going to read a chapter of a book. It's like, no, I'm actually going to spend Sunday afternoon with the fireplace on. Maybe I'll bake my favorite treats and have like a little cookie and a tea and read my book for a few hours. And suddenly your regular Sunday has turned into this beautiful, elevated experience that you'll remember. And so I do think we are meant to go inward sometimes. I do it myself, even
Mhm.
in Austin on rainy days when it does occasionally rain. I look forward to times where, I'm not as social, and I think we need to re energize on our own sometimes. But
Yeah.
I think we also need to balance that with making sure that we remain connected and we don't completely isolate ourselves.
Yeah, and if you look at television, the evolution of television and the evolution of entertainment at home, traditionally in the summertime, there was nothing on TV because people weren't using the TV. They weren't in front of it. There was
Yes.
nothing on. So you had to have movies that you put in your VCR or you had to have DVDs because otherwise there was nothing at the end of the night if you wanted to engage in that,
Isn't that so
because
funny?
everyone was outside.
Yeah.
So take a cue from the way it used to be and just get outside and play or take a risk and plan something this summer with friends or strangers. This is just such
Yes.
great advice and motivation.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. And I actually find that I definitely watch less TV in the summers because I want to take advantage and I want to be outside. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's, the holidays where I'm cozying up and watching Hallmark movies, and that's lovely. And that's a whole experience in and of itself. But I definitely agree. I think they're seasonal and cyclical for a reason. And so when you
Mhm.
can go outside and get that sunshine and gather with friends and soak up the moments.
Well, is there anything that you're really into right now, kind of in the health and wellness and spiritual space that you'd like to share with us?
I've definitely been cold plunging more. I go to a place called Othership in Toronto where it's like sauna and cold plunge in their
Mhm.
guided classes, and that's been a really cool
Mm.
experience. I find, and I take a cold shower at home after my like warm shower. I'll turn it to cold and I'll do that on my own at home. And I find it's just very invigorating. So wellness wise, like I do find that I sort of allow this like peak state to come through where my energy is high. I finish a workout, I go shower, and then I end it with a cold shower. And I just feel like I'm ready to seize the day and go. And so that feels really good. And wellness wise, yeah, I actually have gotten into Pilates. I think it's funny, my early 30s, I was all about the HIIT workouts and doing like really fast paced, intense, like spin, HIIT, all those things. I've started to appreciate slower workouts for my body and mixing things
Mhm.
up. So I really love like switching it up between Pilates, some stretching. I'll do some yoga nidra at night, or I will then do, maybe like once or twice a week, do a more energetic workout. In the summers, I love biking and I love getting outside to like do
Yeah.
things where you infuse those wellness activities into your day to day. So you're not feeling like, oh, I have to check off this workout off my list, but it's just part of the fun activities that you can do, especially in the summertime, because there's so many ways to get movement and exercise where you can be outside.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, any books that you're picking up or you ordered this summer that we should be paying attention to as well?
Oh, I actually was reading, I'm trying to read more fiction because just being someone in business who has my own business, I'm always finding that I'm reading like the latest book on just bettering myself. I'm very
Yes.
into growth and learning. And so
Yes.
I finished Jay Shetty's book called Love, and I was with 8 Rules of Love, I think, but I was just very into that. And I learned that I need to balance it out. So I was like picking up Jodi Picoult books and just like fiction and trying to go back
Yeah.
to reading a little bit more fiction. So I want to get into, I have a list of fiction titles and I'm like, maybe this summer I should spend just using books as entertainment. That's okay too. I
Yeah.
don't always have to be learning. And I think before bed, especially if I'm reading a lot of those like self-help or growth books and my mind is racing with all these thoughts. And so I think
Yeah.
getting a really just good fiction book that I look forward to getting into bed and like curling up with and reading before I go to sleep will allow me to unwind. So if anyone in your audience has recommendations, they should send me some.
Yeah, a little more daydreaming. But
Mhm.
with that in mind, any place that you do keep turning to learn more besides,
Mm.
books?
Podcasts. I actually love podcasts. I love doing
Yeah.
podcast interviews, but I also love listening to podcasts. It's such a great way to like learn and absorb and learn from people where you get a taste of their personality too, right? And it's nice
Yeah.
because if it is just audio, like I'm listening on a walk, I'm listening while I'm driving, and it's just I have so many podcasts that I listen to. So
Yeah.
that is definitely my biggest source of inspiration and growth, and sometimes just like, yeah, it can be entertaining too. I don't listen to as many just entertaining podcasts, but I think there's such a wealth of knowledge out there from people and in a form that's so easily digestible. And then you can, follow them and learn from them afterwards. But it's a great way to gain insight into like deeper conversations that people are having on specific topics that you can look up and say, oh, I'm really interested in gut health, or I'm really interested in learning about this. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
seek out podcasts um, that are catering to those topics.
Are there any particular podcasts or topics that you are really into right now?
Yeah, so I often listen to How I Built This,
Mhm.
just because it's such a great source of inspiration on how people start companies with like nothing and build them into these
Yes.
crazy multi-million dollar companies that they sell or they go on to do other things, or the stories of how they pivoted. It's a great reminder on like they didn't always start with that idea and it evolved to so many other things before they became successful. So that's a big one. I listen to Jay Shetty's podcast on purpose all the time. And also his wife just recently launched a podcast. So I listen to hers called A Really Good Cry, which is really like wholesome and lovely and has some great guests on it. There's so many that I listen to that I'm like trying to think back if there's other ones.
For those listening, if they haven't listened to How I Built This, I listened to the story of Tate's Bakehouse.
Oh
Um,
yes, so good, the
and
cookies.
oh my gosh, it was such a great, inspiring story of how to get yourself back up when you
Yes.
have fallen
Oh,
over and over and over
mhm.
again. It was one of the most inspiring. It was a really great episode for me. Granted, I'm a chef, and I love the Hamptons. If
Yeah.
you like cookies, if you like the Hamptons, um, it's a great episode to listen to if you want to be uplifted. And it also just like changes the way I look at food products when I'm at the grocery store all
Oh,
the
that's
time.
so
Because
great.
I really like think deeply about that founder every time I see her little green bags, at the market, like just the ups and downs of this little cookie and how it ended up all working out for her.
I love that we can hear these stories now because it's so easy to think that someone just did it and it was so seamless and perfect. And now you have this like perfect cookie bag that's in the stores, but there's so much behind it. So I love that one. I also really like Glennon Doyle's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. I think
Oh,
that's such a
yes.
great one in terms of just like emotional topics and getting deep into like things that might just be bothering you and people's personalities and dealing with like life things. It's such a
Yes.
so yeah, that's another one.
Yeah. Well, where can people connect with you, learn from you, take your online courses, get your book? Please share all of the ways people can get to know you better.
Thanks so much. Yeah, you can find me. My website is embiria.ca. That's EMBIR.ca. The book, Beautiful Everydays, is available on Amazon.com. You can find me on social on Instagram at Embiria. I love just like connecting in the DMs there. So that's one thing that I use it for. I try and use social media for good and just to add a lot of value and connect with
Yeah.
people. So if you send me a message, I will happily respond. And yeah, you can connect with me in all of those places.
Fantastic. Well, it's been such a treat to connect with you and have you on the podcast.
Thanks so
You've
much.
really excited me to just make some good plans for the summer.
Mm,
Um,
I love
and
that.
really, really like get it on the calendar now because it goes fast.
It goes fast. It's short. So yeah, get what you can on the calendar. And I hope that you have a beautiful summer filled with experiences that you love.
You too. Thank you so much for connecting.
Thanks, Whitney.